Number 1. Charlie, the Lake Monster. Payette Lake, 1920. The first official report of something unusual reached McCall from the cold, deep water. The lake was already known for steep shores and dark depths, but the story gave it a new secret. Witnesses described a large shape moving below the surface, then disappearing before anyone could study it closely. The lake kept the first report vague. The legend exploded in August 1944. More than 20 people reported a humped, serpent-like creature crossing the lake. They estimated it at about 35 feet long, with rough skin that looked almost like a shell. The number of witnesses made the tale harder to dismiss, and news of the animal traveled far beyond Valley County. McCall suddenly had a monster. People began calling the creature Charlie, turning a frightening lake monster into a familiar local mystery. Some believed it was an unknown animal hiding in a deep glacial lake. Others blamed floating logs, waves, fish, or distance. No clear photograph or captured specimen settled the argument, so every new ripple kept the old report alive. As mountain tourism grew during the mid-1900s, Charlie became part of Payette Lake itself, a reminder that even a popular vacation place can still feel wild. Boats cross the same water today, while the dark bottom remains mostly unseen. Whenever a long wake rises at night with no clear boat nearby, McCall's oldest question seems to surface again. Number 2. The Old Idaho Penitentiary. Boise, 1872. The old Idaho Penitentiary opened when the territory was still rough, isolated, and growing fast. Over the next century, more than 10,000 prisoners passed through its gates. The walls held thieves, killers, escape attempts, punishments, and long years of silence before the prison finally closed in 1973. Idaho changed outside, but the cells remained hard. Among its most feared inmates was Raymond Allen Snowden, later called Idaho's Jack the Ripper. He was executed in 1957 inside House 5, the prison's maximum security building. His death became tied to the darkest part of the site's history, and later stories placed his restless spirit near the place where his sentence ended. His name still follows visitors there. Visitors often enter expecting a museum, but the setting carries more than old displays. Narrow rooms, locked doors, and hard stone make it easy to imagine the weight of confinement. Every corridor reflects Idaho's frontier justice system, when punishment could be severe and prisoners lived for years with little comfort, privacy, or hope. No haunting can explain the prison's entire past, because the real history is already heavy enough. Still, people report an uneasy feeling around House 5, as though the building remembers its final nights. The penitentiary now stands quiet above Boise, but its silence feels crowded with more than a century of lives that never fully left. Number 3. Custer Ghost Town. Custer, 1879. Gold prospectors pushed into the mountains of central Idaho and built a town beside the promise of rich ore. Cabins, businesses, and mining activity followed quickly. For a time, Custer seemed ready to last, because every wagon and new arrival carried the same belief that the next strike could change everything. Hope arrived faster than winter, but mining towns lived by what came out of the ground. As the best deposits weakened, jobs disappeared and families moved away. By 1910, Custer had been abandoned. The streets that once rang with tools, wagon wheels, and voices fell silent, leaving buildings behind like pages from a story that ended before anyone planned. The boom had spent itself. In 1966, the Chalice National Forest took ownership and helped preserve the town. That decision saved Custer from vanishing completely. Restored structures now offer a rare view into the Salmon River mining era, when communities could rise in a few seasons and collapse just as quickly when money and ore ran out. Here, the cycle can still be seen. The ghost in Custer is not one named spirit. It is the feeling of an entire town paused between success and failure. Wind moves through empty doorways where miners once counted wages, shared news, and planned futures. The buildings remain, but the people are gone, and that quiet makes Custer's history feel close enough to hear. The valley keeps the rest. Number 4. Lady Bluebeard's Final Rest. Twin Falls, 1915. Lida Southard began the series of events that would make newspapers call her Lady Bluebeard. Between 1915 and 1920, 4 husbands died, and insurance money followed. At first, each death could be explained alone. Together, they formed a pattern that investigators could no longer ignore. Suspicion grew one funeral at a time. The case became a national sensation because early forensic science was still developing. Detectives and medical experts had fewer tools than investigators use today, so every test, witness, and financial record mattered. Southard was eventually convicted in Idaho, and her name became linked with one of the state's most famous criminal stories. The story spread nationwide. Years later, she was buried at Sunset Memorial Park in Twin Falls. The cemetery is peaceful, yet visitors sometimes describe the area around her grave as strangely heavy or dark. There is no proof that anything supernatural waits there, but the documented case gives the quiet ground an uncomfortable weight. The legend follows the name on the stone. Her final resting place does not need a moving shadow to feel haunted. It holds the end of a story built from trust, money, death, and headlines that traveled across the country. People still search for the grave, then lower their voices when they find it. Even in full daylight, Lady Bluebeard's name seems to darken the air. The hush remains. Number 5. The Mountain Cannibal Dwarves. Long before modern roads crossed the mountains, Shoshone and Bannock oral traditions warned of small, dangerous beings hidden among the volcanic rocks. They were about 2 feet tall, with long tails and a taste for human flesh. In some tellings, they wrapped those tails around themselves to hide their true shape. A harmless shape could become a trap. The beings were said to lure children away from safe paths and deeper into the broken high desert country. That detail made the story more than a simple monster tale. The mountains contain sharp lava, sudden drops, narrow passages, and wide spaces where a person can become lost before anyone knows which direction they took. The land itself could swallow a trail. For young listeners, the warning was clear. Do not wander alone. Do not follow strange voices, and respect a landscape that can change from open ground to hidden danger quickly. The legend gave those dangers a face that children would remember. fear became a lesson, passed through generations when maps, fences, and warning signs did not exist. Today, the cannibal dwarves belong to a living tradition, not a creature proven by science. Their story should be heard with respect for the people who carried it and the land that shaped it. When the sun falls behind the ridges, the rocks create countless hiding places after sunset. Number 6. The Idaho Hotel. Boise, 1900. The Idaho Hotel opened as the city shed its frontier image. Built with brick, polished wood, electric lights, and an elevator, it welcomed politicians, business leaders, travelers, and members of Idaho's growing upper class. The grand building showed that Boise wanted to become a modern capital in its era, not just a stop near mining camps. Yet the hotel's proud image carries a darker tale. Local legend says a bellman was shot inside the building and never truly left his post. Guests later reported seeing a uniformed figure in the halls, only for him to vanish around a corner. Others claimed the elevator moved on its own, stopping as if an unseen worker were still answering another call. The story fits a place that watched generations come and go. Its rooms held celebrations, arguments, private deals, and lonely nights far from home. As Boise changed outside, the Idaho kept traces of an earlier city within its walls. A sudden bell, closing door, or sound from the elevator shaft could seem like someone continuing a job from long ago. The Idaho is remembered not only for elegance, but for the uneasy feeling that service there never fully ended. Residents pass the building knowing its halls once carried Idaho's important visitors. When the elevator pauses on an empty floor, the old bellman's story rises again, as though he is waiting in silence for one more guest to arrive at last. Number 7. Spirit Lake. Spirit Lake in northern Idaho carries a Kootenai story older than the towns and roads around it. Tradition tells of two young lovers whose bond was forbidden. Unable to remain together, they entered the water and drowned. The lake was remembered as Testimony in honor of their devotion, making the shoreline a place where love and grief became one forever. On moonlit nights, the legend says a canoe appears far from shore. Two silent figures sit inside, their shapes dark against the silver water. No paddle seems to touch the surface, yet the canoe then glides onward before fading into mist or shadow. Those who see it describe no cry or splash, only a quiet passage that feels sorrowful rather than dangerous. The tale survived because lakes can preserve stories as strongly as they reflect the sky. Spirit Lake's wooded banks, changing fog, and long stretches of dark water make distance hard to judge. A drifting log or a real canoe may seem uncertain after sunset, but the old account still gives that uncertainty a human meaning rooted in forbidden love and loss. Testimony is therefore more than a ghost story told beside the water. It carries a reminder that devotion can become part of a landscape when people repeat it across generations. When moonlight opens a pale path across Spirit Lake, some still watch for two figures moving together, forever crossing the water that would not allow them to return. Number 8. The Brig at Farragut State Park. Ethol, 1942. Farragut Naval Training Station rose beside Lake Pend Oreille as the United States prepared sailors for World War II. Idaho's quiet forest filled with barracks, drill grounds, hospitals, and strict routines. By 1945, part of the station also held more than 900 German prisoners of war, bringing a distant global conflict into Kootenai County. One surviving structure is commonly called the brig, a concrete reminder of confinement and discipline. Visitors report a balding man dressed in clothing resembling a prisoner's uniform. He appears near the cells or at the edge of sight, then disappears before anyone can approach. Unexplained footsteps and sudden cold feelings also belong to the tale. The setting gives the haunting unusual weight. Farragut was not an imagined camp. It was a huge naval center where young recruits trained before facing danger overseas. German prisoners also lived under guard there as the war neared its end. The empty rooms now hold no orders or roll calls, but the walls still represent fear, separation, and uncertainty. Today, the grounds form Farragut State Park, where families hike, camp, and enjoy the lake. Yet the brig belongs to another Idaho, one connected directly to World War II. When a lone shape seems to stand behind a concrete doorway, the past feels close again, as though one silent prisoner is still waiting for the gate to open and his name to be called. Number 9. The Swan Valley Monster. Swan Valley, August 22, 1868. An old-timer near Old's Ferry claimed he clearly saw something truly impossible along the Snake River. The creature was nearly 20 feet long, with a snake-like head as large as a washtub. Black whiskers framed its face, while an elephant-like trunk hung below. Even that strange beginning was only part of the description. The witness added 10-inch fangs, a red forked tongue, and green poison that sprayed from its mouth. Beneath the body were 12 short legs, as if several familiar animals had been joined into one frontier nightmare. The report traveled fast because it was too colorful to ignore, whether widely repeated as news, rumor, entertainment, or an old man's joke. Stories like this flourished when Idaho still felt remote and unknown to many readers. Travelers met unfamiliar tracks, powerful rivers, and animals they had never seen closely. Tall tales turned that uncertainty into entertainment. Each retelling could add another fang, leg, or impossible feature until the wilderness itself seemed able to build monsters. No specimen of the Swan Valley monster was ever found, and its body sounds more like invention than zoology. That may be the point. The creature captured how the western frontier looked to people who knew it mostly through rumors. Somewhere between fear and humor, 12 stubby legs still carry the old beast beside the Snake River in old tales. Number 10. Silver City and the Idaho Hotel. Silver City, 1860s. Rich deposits drew miners into the Owyhee Mountains, and a busy settlement rose from the high desert. Stores, homes, offices, and saloons appeared as silver money flowed. At the center stood the Idaho Hotel, welcoming travelers who reached town after a difficult mountain journey. For a time, Silver City seemed built to last. The mines eventually weakened, but the town never disappeared completely. Many original buildings survived, protected partly by isolation and the dry climate. That makes Silver City one of Idaho's finest time capsules. Visitors still walk streets lined with wooden structures and imagine wagons, miners, children, and merchants moving through the same narrow spaces. Local stories say the Idaho hotel is haunted by an elderly man wearing a long duster. He appears in halls or rooms, looking as if he stepped out of the Silver Rush. Outside, some visitors report hearing children or seeing small figures dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They vanish among the buildings, leaving empty streets where play should continue. Silver City's strongest ghost may be the town itself. So much of the 1800s remains visible that the distance between past and present feels thin. Wind slips under hotel doors and crosses porches worn by generations. When laughter seems to rise from an abandoned street, it is easy to believe the Silver Era never fully packed its bags. It never did. Number 11. Shoshone Ice Caves. Shoshone, Idaho. Beneath the open lava fields lies a tunnel where summer heat suddenly gives way to winter. The Shoshone Ice Caves stretch for about 1,000 feet through ancient volcanic rock, and cold air settles inside the tube year-round. Water freezes across the floor, turning the darkness into a hidden chamber of stone and ice. The cave keeps its cold. Local lore connects the cave to Princess Idaho, whose spirit is said to rest within the frozen passage. Visitors have described slow footsteps beyond the reach of their lights, followed by whispers that seem to move through the tunnel. The sounds may stop when people stand still, then begin again farther ahead, as if someone unseen is keeping pace. The cave itself can create strange effects. Voices bounce from wall to wall, dripping water echoes like steps, and uneven rock changes the direction of every sound. Yet those natural answers do not erase the legend. In a place where breath turns visible and daylight disappears behind you, even a small noise can feel like a message from deep underground. The Shoshone Ice Caves unite two kinds of wonder: Idaho's violent volcanic past and a story carried through local tradition. Visitors enter expecting a geological marvel, but many leave remembering the darkness most. When a heavy step sounds across the ice with no figure nearby, Princess Idaho's name returns with the echo. The cold outlives summer. Number 12. The Haunted Mill in Teton. Teton, Idaho, early 1900s. A flour mill rose beside an agricultural community that depended on grain, machinery, and long days of work. Inside, belts turned, wooden floors shook, and fine dust floated through the air as wheat became flour. The building belonged to an era when a local mill could keep farms and families moving. Its work fed the valley. After its working years ended, the old structure gained a very different life. Its narrow rooms, worn equipment, and confusing passages became the setting for a modern haunted attraction. Stories of regional monsters and Idaho legends now fill the maze, allowing visitors to walk through folklore rather than simply hear it beside a fire. Few places feel so divided. The mill's age gives those staged scares an extra edge. Floors creak because generations crossed them. Shadows collect around machinery once used for real labor, and the building shape was designed for industry, not comfort. In the dark, it can be difficult to tell which groan belongs to the performance and which comes from the mill itself. That mixture makes the haunted mill in Teton unusual. It is not only a claim that one ghost remains in one room, it is a piece of Idaho's farming history transformed into a home for many legends. When the final light fades behind a visitor, the old mill seems to start working again. Number 13. The Bear Lake Monster. Bear Lake, 1868. Settlers along the Idaho-Utah border began hearing reports of a creature in the bright blue water. Joseph C. Rich published an account that year, describing local claims of an animal unlike anything familiar. It was said to have a long body, dark green and slimy skin, and beet red eyes that showed above the surface. The rumor took hold. Some witnesses compared it to a crocodile, while later versions gave it a head, powerful jaws, or speed that no ordinary lake animal should possess. A few stories even claimed the monster could leave Bear Lake and travel through nearby waterways. Each report changed the shape slightly, but the same question remained: what was moving under the water? The legend grew as Mormon settlers tried to understand a large and unfamiliar landscape. Naming its mysteries helped turn a distant lake into part of community life. Skeptics suggested fish, swimming animals, waves, or stories enlarged through repetition. No body or clear evidence appeared, yet the creature became more famous with every retelling. Today, Bear Lake is known for recreation, clear water, and beaches, but the monster still belongs to its identity. Boats cut across the same surface where the first report spread in the 1860s. When a dark shape travels beneath the blue without rising, people still remember those red eyes and watch until the water becomes calm again. The lake stayed silent. Number 14. Stricker Ranch, Rock Creek Station. Hanson, Idaho, 1865. Herman Stricker established Rock Creek Station along a route used by stagecoaches and Oregon Trail travelers. After miles of dust, danger, and uncertain water, the ranch offered food, rest, supplies, and human company. For exhausted families moving west, that lonely station could feel like the safest place in the territory. Not every traveler survived the journey. A cemetery near the ranch holds people whose plans ended along the trail, reminders that disease, accidents, weather, and exhaustion could turn hope into grief. The graves gave the station another duty. It became a place where strangers were remembered, even when relatives had to continue without them. Local tradition says Mrs. Stricker still watches over the property. Unlike many spirits, she is described as helpful rather than threatening. People tell of a gentle presence in the buildings, a woman who seems to straighten, guide, or quietly remain near visitors. Her legend fits the role the ranch once played, a shelter in a dangerous country. Rock Creek Station survives because its history is larger than wagons and old walls. It represents families who served travelers and those who never reached the end of the road. Number 15. Bayhorse Ghost Town. Bayhorse, Idaho, 1870s. Miners entered a narrow canyon in Custer County and found valuable gold and silver. A settlement quickly followed, complete with cabins, workshops, mills, and the hard rhythm of ore moving from mountain to furnace. During its strongest years, Bayhorse helped prove that remote Idaho could support mining on a major scale. The work changed the surrounding hills. Stone buildings rose near steep slopes, while large charcoal kilns produced fuel for processing ore. Miners faced fire, accidents, cold winters, and the chance that a promising vein might suddenly fail. When profits weakened, the people drifted away, leaving machinery and walls behind in the canyon. The danger never felt far. Unlike many boomtowns that vanished beneath weather or later construction, Bayhorse remained remarkably visible. The Salmon Chalice National Forest now protects its ruins, including weathered structures and kilns that reveal how much labor once filled the site. Preservation turned the abandoned camp into a record written in timber, iron, and stone. Bayhorse does not need one famous ghost to feel occupied. Empty windows look toward paths where workers once carried tools, and the canyon holds every sound longer than expected. As evening settles over the ruins, the town seems caught between industry and wilderness, too complete to be gone, yet far too silent to be alive. Its history never vanished. Number 16. Fishwoman. Lake Coeur d'Alene, 1997. Near Big Pointed Rock, witnesses reported an unusual figure moving through the water. It was described as part woman and part fish, rising just long enough to disturb the surface before slipping away. The strange account joined older lake stories, but its modern date gave the legend a fresh life among boaters and visitors. Some reports added an even larger companion, a horned creature strong enough to lift or rock small boats. Together, the fishwoman and the beast turned a busy recreation lake into something less predictable. A wake with no visible source, a sudden pull beneath a hull, or a shape beside the rocks could quickly become evidence in the minds of nervous witnesses. Lake Coeur d'Alene is deep, wide, and often difficult to read. Wind can bend reflections, fish can break the surface without warning, and submerged logs may shift below boats. Those explanations are reasonable, yet they do not fully erase the 1997 story. Modern development may surround the lake, but much of the water remains hidden from view. That is why the fishwoman still belongs to this place. Her legend proves that mystery does not vanish when cabins, marinas, and highways arrive. Near Big Pointed Rock, every swirl can seem deliberate, as though someone below is circling unseen. The water settles quickly, but the feeling that it noticed you can remain long after. Number 17. Pocatello High School. Pocatello, 1892. The city opened a high school as the railroad community expanded across southeastern Idaho. The first building served a growing population, but a larger school replaced it in 1914. Generations studied, performed, argued, celebrated, and walked the same halls, giving the building more than a century of shared memory. That long history gained national attention in 2014, when security footage appeared to show a hazy figure moving through an empty hallway. Motion sensors activated as the shape crossed the image, even though no student or employee was supposed to be there. The clip spread quickly, and viewers watched the shadow again and again, searching for a face. Skeptics suggested dust, reflections, equipment errors, or a person caught at a strange angle. Yet the video fit older stories about unexplained sounds and movement inside the school. Buildings filled with young people can collect strong memories, and every dark stairwell or empty classroom seems different once the last bell has rung. Pocatello High School remains an active place, not an abandoned ruin, which makes its legend more unsettling. By day, the halls belong to ordinary lessons and busy footsteps. At night, the 2014 figure seems to reclaim them. Number 18. Bonanza Ghost Town. Bonanza, late 1800s, miners built this settlement in central Idaho near the richer workings around Custer. Cabins, stores, and a cemetery appeared as people followed gold into the mountains. For a short time, the town held families, workers, and hope. Then the ore weakened, money moved elsewhere, and Bonanza began to empty. Unlike nearby Custer, Bonanza was never restored into a polished historic site. Its cabins sag, brush pushes into old paths, and the cemetery grows quieter each year. That difference gives the town a rougher feeling. Here, visitors do not see the mining era carefully arranged. They see what happens when human plans are left to weather and time. The wilderness has been reclaiming Bonanza slowly. Snow enters broken roofs, roots split foundations, and animals cross rooms where miners once slept. Names on grave markers fade while trees rise around them. Every season removes another small detail, making the town feel less abandoned by people and more absorbed by the mountains themselves. Bonanza's haunting comes from that unfinished disappearance. Nothing dramatic closed the town in one night. Life simply thinned until silence won. Walking among the ruins, a visitor can imagine a door opening or a voice calling from the brush. Number 19. The Wampus Cat. Clark Fork, 1935. Students at the local junior and senior high school adopted one of America's strangest legendary animals as their mascot, the Wampus Cat. Folklore describes it as a powerful, mysterious wildcat, sometimes larger and fiercer than any real cougar. In Idaho, however, the feared creature gained a new job, representing a school. Across the country, Wampus Cat stories differ. Some describe glowing eyes in the woods, a cry that freezes travelers, or a beast able to move without leaving tracks. The legend likely blended frontier exaggeration with older regional tales. By the time Clark Fork chose the name, the monster had become familiar enough to inspire pride instead of panic. That change matters. Mascots turned danger into identity. Students could cheer for the Wampus Cats, wear the name, and carry it into competitions. A creature once imagined beyond the firelight became part of ordinary community life. Folklore was not forgotten. It was tamed, printed on signs, and passed to each new class. The Clark Fork Wampus Cat still shows how legends survive by changing shape. It does not need to stalk Idaho forests to remain alive. It runs onto courts and fields whenever students represent their town. Somewhere between monster and mascot, the old wildcat found a permanent home and became something the community proudly calls its own. Number 20. Idaho State Tuberculosis Hospital. Gooding, 1947. The Idaho State Tuberculosis Hospital opened during an era when the disease still brought fear, isolation, and long treatments. Patients were sent away from home because fresh air, rest, and separation were among the few defenses available. The building held people waiting for medicine to catch up with an illness that could take years. Some patients recovered and left. Others died far from their families, surrounded by nurses, white walls, and the sound of footsteps in long corridors. After the hospital closed, the property later became known as the Gooding University Inn. Yet stories from its medical years followed it, as if the building had kept the worry of those rooms. Visitors and workers have reported shadowy figures, doors moving without help, and footsteps when no one else was nearby. A shape may pass at the end of a hall, then vanish before it reaches a doorway. Skeptics point to an aging structure settling in the night, but the site's history makes every sound feel tied to someone who once waited there. The haunting is strongest because tuberculosis was real, slow, and often lonely. This was a place built to separate sickness from the outside world, and many lives became hidden within it. When footsteps cross an empty floor today, the sound seems to carry more than a ghost tale. It recalls patients whose names faded, but whose long waiting never did. The rooms remember. Number 21. The Spirit of Mesa Falls. Near Ashton, Mesa Falls drops through a volcanic canyon with enough force to shake the air and cover nearby stone in cold spray. Long before modern trails and viewing platforms, Shoshone tradition connected the place with a young girl dressed in white. The story says she drowned while trying to save another person, leaving her memory beside the rushing water. Visitors later reported seeing a pale figure near the falls, sometimes standing where mist hides the rocks. Others heard drums beneath the roar, steady beats that seemed too regular to be water. The girl rarely threatens anyone in the legend. She appears more like a warning, reminding people that beauty and danger share the same canyon. Mesa Falls was formed by ancient lava flows and shaped by the Henry's Fork as it cut through layers of stone. That geology explains the thunder, spray, and shifting echoes that can confuse the senses. Yet natural causes do not remove the story. The roar swallows voices, making the river itself feel alive. They help explain why this powerful landscape became a place where spiritual memory could endure. The spirit of Mesa Falls gives the waterfall a human sorrow beyond its geological age. Families watch the white water crash while the mist rises like a moving veil. Number 22. Sidewinder's Bar and Grill. Murtaugh, early 1900s. The building now occupied by Sidewinder's Bar and Grill began collecting history long before its current name appeared. For roughly 110 years, different owners, workers, and customers passed through its rooms. Each business left another layer behind, turning the old structure into a familiar part of town. The strangest stories concern a playful but stubborn presence. Staff members say lights switch on or off without warning, while the jukebox starts when no one has touched it. On quieter nights, music may seem to come from an unseen piano. The activity is usually described as mischievous rather than violent, as if someone still wants the room awake. Old commercial buildings naturally creak, settle, and hide aging wires. A faulty switch can explain a flicker, and machines sometimes start because of electrical problems. Yet repeated events gain power when several workers remember them. At Sidewinders, every unexplained song joins decades of local talk until the building itself seems to have a personality. The legend survives because the haunting interrupts ordinary life. A ghost in an abandoned ruin is expected. A jukebox choosing a song inside a working restaurant feels more personal. When the final customers leave and the lights dim, staff still listen for one last note from a piano no one can see, playing for a room that should be empty. Number 23. The Pend Oreille Paddler. Lake Pend Oreille, 1944. People began reporting a long gray shape moving through the water in slow rising curves. It did not look like a normal boat wake, and witnesses said the body seemed to undulate before slipping below the surface. The creature became known as the Pend Oreille Paddler, Idaho's answer to a sea serpent. The date made the story especially strange. During and after World War II, the lake was connected with secret Navy work, including sonar testing in its deep water. That military activity gave local rumors a modern twist. Some wondered whether the paddler was an unknown animal disturbed by experiments, while others suspected equipment or wakes were being misread. Lake Pend Oreille is deep, broad, and surrounded by steep country, allowing distant objects to change shape in mist and glare. Waves can join into long, dark lines, and floating timber may rise and fall like a living back. Those explanations sound reasonable on shore, but they feel less certain when a gray curve appears beside a quiet boat. The paddler endures because it joins two powerful mysteries: what hides in deep water and what governments do in secret. No clear specimen ever settled the reports, and the Navy connection kept imaginations working. When the lake grows smooth at evening, one rolling shape is enough to make 1944 feel close again beneath the surface. The lake has no answer after the shape disappears. Number 24. Boot Hill Pioneer Cemetery.
We need to move this powder up the hill now.
Idaho City, 1860s. Gold brought thousands of hopeful people into a mountain camp built almost overnight. It also brought fire, disease, accidents, and violence. Of the first 200 recorded deaths, only 28 were considered natural. Boot Hill Pioneer Cemetery became the resting place for many whose search for fortune ended far from home. The burial ground is believed to contain roughly 3,000 unmarked graves. Some belong to miners, travelers, children, or residents whose names faded from local records. Others died during the great fires that repeatedly struck the crowded wooden town. With few lasting markers, entire lives were reduced to uneven ground and stories passed down. The numbers reveal how dangerous an Idaho gold camp could be. Buildings stood close together, medical help was limited, and arguments could turn deadly. A person might survive a mine only to face illness, winter, or flames in town. Boot Hill was not created by one disaster. It grew because danger followed daily life through the boom years. Today, quiet trees surround the cemetery, and Idaho City continues below. Visitors may see only grass, stones, and weathered markers, but thousands of forgotten endings are believed to rest beneath them. When wind moves across Boot Hill, the gold rush no longer sounds like adventure alone. Number 25. Mackay's Mine Hill. Mackay, late 1800s. Miners climbed into the White Knob Mountains and began turning a remote slope into an industrial center. Copper and lead came from the rock in enormous amounts, eventually totaling millions of pounds. Cabins, work sites, and transport systems spread across Mine Hill as labor replaced the quiet of the high country. Moving ore was as important as finding it. Roads, cables, and mechanical systems carried heavy loads down steep ground toward processing and shipment. Workers lived near the mines, surrounded by dust, machinery, cold weather, and constant risk. The ruins still show that this was not a tiny prospecting camp, but an operation built on a massive scale. When the richest veins weakened, the machines stopped and the workforce left. Cabins stood empty, transport structures rusted, and the mountain slowly reclaimed the paths. What had once produced wealth became a scattered collection of wood, metal, and stone. The silence feels greater because the place was once filled with such relentless noise. Mine Hill now preserves the shape of Idaho's mining ambition after the money moved on. Visitors can follow the remains and imagine ore swinging above the slope while men worked below. At dusk, the empty cabins seem to wait for a shift that will never begin. That mountain kept the ruins, but not the voices that built them. Old machinery still points back toward the vanished mines. Number 26. Howell's Opera House. Oakley, 1907, BP. Howells built an opera house in a small agricultural town that wanted more than stores and workrooms. Howells, remembered as Cassia County's first prosecutor, created a hall where plays, music, meetings, and community events could share one stage. Its size and style showed how strongly early settlers valued culture. The building's best-known mystery appears during live performances. Actors and audience members have reported an extra woman standing on stage, even when no such person belongs in the scene. She may be noticed for only a moment before disappearing behind curtains or scenery. No cast list includes her, yet the same quiet stranger keeps returning. Old theaters are filled with practical tricks. Dust catches the light, curtains shift, and people waiting in the wings can be mistaken for someone else. But Howell's Opera House has hosted generations of performers since 1907, and every production leaves memories behind. That long history makes an unexplained figure feel like part of the company. The woman has no proven name or final story, which keeps her presence strangely gentle. She does not stop the show, she seems to join it. When applause fills the room and the actors take their bows, people still study the stage for one face too many, as though an earlier performer has returned for a final curtain call. Number 27. Seven Devils Mountain Spirits. Along Idaho's western border, the Seven Devils Mountains rise in steep, jagged lines above deep canyons. Nez Perce tradition identifies this high country as a place of powerful spirits and guardians. The peaks were never simply empty ground to cross or resources to claim. They were living parts of a world that demanded attention and respect. Travel through the range has always been difficult. Weather can change quickly, trails cling to sharp slopes, and clouds can erase familiar landmarks. Within the traditional stories, such dangers are not meaningless accidents. They remind travelers that the mountains hold power greater than any one person, and that pride can become dangerous in sacred country. Later, miners and settlers often viewed western mountains through the promise of timber, ore, and land. The Nez Perce understanding offers a different lesson. A mountain is not valuable only for what can be removed from it. Its ridges, animals, water, and unseen guardians belong to a connected place whose limits should not be ignored. The spirits of the seven devils are therefore more than figures in a frightening tale. They express a relationship between people and the high country, where caution is also a form of respect. When wind moves across the peaks like distant voices, the mountains seem to repeat the oldest warning: enter carefully, take little, and remember that you are a guest. Show humility. Number 28. The Sluice Box.
Well, hello there.
Idaho City, 1970s. Larry and Ruthie Carter opened an antique shop called the Sluice Box, filling an unusual building with objects that already carried long histories. Lamps, furniture, tools, and forgotten household pieces gathered beneath one roof. In a former gold rush town, the shop felt like another chamber of the past. The shop seems to remember Larry Carter. Larry Carter reportedly designed the building with strange corners and a character all its own, joking that it might attract weary souls. After years among antiques and visitors, his own presence became part of the story. People reported floating lights, unexplained movement, and the sense that Larry still watched over the place after his death. Antique shops naturally invite ghost stories because nearly every object belonged to someone else first. A worn chair, old portrait, or locked trunk can arrive without its complete history. At the Sluice Box, those mysteries were multiplied by the building's maze-like design and Idaho City's memories of miners, fires, and sudden deaths.
It really is.
By 2014, the shop's legend had become tied as closely to Larry as to anything on its shelves. Visitors did not only search for valuable objects, they listened for the owner who might never have left. Number 29. Water Babies of Massacre Rocks. Near Massacre Rocks, the Snake River moves through a landscape long known to the Shoshone-Bannock peoples. Their traditions speak of water babies, spirit beings connected with the water. They are not simply lost children or ordinary ghosts. They belong to an indigenous spiritual understanding of the river and the forces within it. Some non-native retellings claim the beings came from infants abandoned or killed during hardship. tribal members reject that explanation. Repeating it as fact changes the tradition and places an outside story over the voices of the people who preserve it. The water babies are understood as independent beings with their own power and meaning. Accounts often warn that cries or unusual sounds near the river should not be followed carelessly. That caution fits a place where currents, rocks, and changing water can threaten anyone who approaches without respect. Yet the lesson is not only physical safety, it also concerns behavior toward a spiritually important landscape and its guardians. The water babies of Massacre Rocks should therefore be told without turning tribal tradition into a sensational tragedy. Their mystery comes from the Snake River itself, beautiful, dangerous, and alive with meanings older than written records. When a childlike sound seems to cross the water at dusk, the respectful answer is not to chase it, but to listen and leave the river undisturbed. Number 30. The Orpheum Theater.
Look at this crowd. Everyone who's
Twin Falls, 1921. The Orpheum Theater opened during an age when a night at the movies or a live performance could feel like a grand event. Audiences entered beneath bright lights, found their seats, and watched stories unfold across the stage and screen. For generations, the building gathered laughter, applause, music, and whispered conversation. After the seats empty, staff members say some of those sounds continue. Disembodied laughter has been heard in the auditorium, followed by footsteps crossing areas where no patron or performer is present. The noises may stop when someone goes to investigate, leaving only rows of silent chairs and a dark stage ahead. The room still remembers everyone. Theaters are perfect homes for such reports. Their rooms are built to carry voices, backstage passages hide movement, and old wood shifts as temperatures change. Yet the Orpheum also holds more than a century of public memory. Thousands of people brought excitement, sadness, and expectation through its doors, giving every echo a possible human past. No single spirit has claimed the Orpheum as its own, and perhaps that makes the haunting more fitting. The building seems to remember audiences rather than one person.
If you enjoy this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.